Okay, this is our second lesson in Zechariah, and we're going to go through chapters 6 through 10. We went through 1 through 5 our first time, and next time we're going to go through 11 through 14. There's 14 chapters, so we divided it into three, and there's a lot in those last four chapters too. So Zechariah was kind of a young prophet, and he was at the time of the temple. They started building the temple, and they got distracted with all the attacks on it from the locals and the Samaritans, and then they kind of laid off and decided to build their houses. Now they're going to try to go back, and Zechariah and Haggai were the ones that were cheering them on to do this. But he's more prophetic and more spiritual, and he's got a lot of end times information, and he's I think, one of the very important books in the Old Testament for prophecies, and he has more prophecies about the Messiah than all the minor prophets put together, and he's one of the 12 minor prophets. So the 8 visions of Zechariah, one was rider on a horse, a house that shall be built, and that was that the Lord was going to help them finish the temple. 4 horns, God used Gentiles to carry out his chastening, and also used Gentiles to chasten them, and was a blessing. And the man with a measuring line, Jerusalem would be inhabited, and there would be a temple. Joshua the high priest, clothed and consecrated. Satan can't hinder the blessings by the branch. And 7 lamps and 2 olive trees, God will work by his spirit and not by might or power. And the flying scroll, first Christ would come and the temple would be destroyed. And that's in chapter 5, that the Messiah would walk in this temple, but it's going to be destroyed after that. And the 7th is, yeah.
What time period are we talking about here?
Let's see. This is all different times here, but he wrote it about 530 BC. Yeah, yeah. And the woman sitting in the ephod, and idolatry would be judged in Babylon, in the end times. Vision 8, 4 chariots between 2 brass mountains, and that's what we're going to go through tonight. God's chastening will end, and the branch will build the temple and rule as a priest upon his throne if Israel repents. And so that's the one we're going to go through tonight. In chapter 6, verse 1, I looked up again, and there before me were 4 chariots coming out from between the 2 mountains of bronze. And so anyway, we think that this is going to be overseeing the punishment of the world, and the 2 mountains of bronze is a sign of deity, I believe. And they send out these angels on these chariots. And the first chariot had red horses, the second black, and the third white, and the fourth dapple, all of them powerful. So these mean red horses is bloodshed, black is death, white is victory, and dapple means there's going to be plagues and illness. And I asked the angel who was speaking, "What are these, my Lord?" The angel answered me, "These are the 4 spirits of heaven going out and standing in the presence of the Lord of the whole world. The one with the black horse is going towards the north country, the one with the white horse towards the west, and the one with the dapple horses towards the south." And when the powerful horses went out, they were straining to go throughout the earth. And he said, "Go throughout the earth." So they went throughout the earth. And this represents what's happening during the tribulation, that there's going to be angels in charge of this, all that's going on in the earth, and we know it's all part of God's plan. And during this tribulation, that there's going to be great judgment. There's going to be victories for some, and bloodshed, and all these horrible things, plagues, and death. And then he called to me, "Look, those going towards the north country have given my spirit rest in the land of the Lord of the north." So judgment has come to the land of the north, and bad things aren't going to happen anymore because they're going to be eliminated. And the word of the Lord came to me: "Take silver and gold from the exiles, Heldai, Tobiah, and Jediah, who have arrived from Babylon, and go the same day to the horses of Josiah," and his name is Jesus, the son of Zephaniah. So this is what's happening at the time this was written. And so he's telling them, go and get the gold and silver from these folks that are in Babylon still, and take him to Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. "Take the silver and gold and make a crown and set it on the head of the high priest, Joshua, son of Zadok. Priests are never crowned." So it's saying they're going to put a crown on him, but this is a sign that there will be a priest in the future that's going to be a king and a priest, and that's Jesus Christ during the millennial kingdom. 12, "Tell him that this is what the Lord Almighty says. Here is the man whose name is the branch, and he will branch out from this place and build the temple of the Lord." So the Messiah will build the temple in the millennial kingdom. This is also predicted in Isaiah 11 and 53, Jeremiah 33, and Haggai chapter 2. And so this is talking about a future event, and this is the one who will have the crown on his head, the high priest, from the order of Melchizedek, as we know. "It is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he will be clothed with majesty and sit and rule on his throne, and he will be a priest on his throne, and there will be harmony between the two." So this is talking about the millennial kingdom. Jesus is going to build the temple, and he'll be clothed like a king and sit on his throne, and he'll also be a priest. And harmony between the Gentiles and the Jews, I believe, is what they're talking about of the two. "The crown will be given to Heldai, Tobijah, Jediah, and Hin, the son of Zephaniah, as a memorial in the temple of the Lord." So take that crown that they just made and put it inside the temple when they build it, and probably put it in the Holy of Holies. Verse 15, "Those who are far away will come and help to build the temple of the Lord." That's the present temple. "And you will know that the Lord Almighty has sent me to you." And that's talking about Zechariah. "And this will happen if you diligently obey the Lord your God." So this is the key, and it only happened if you don't walk in your own way, but you walk in the Lord's way and walk with the Lord and be trusting him. Chapter 7, moving right along here. "In the 4th year of King Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month, the month of Kislev. The people of Bethel had sent Shazazar and Regem Melech together with their men to entreat the Lord by asking the priests of the house of the Lord Almighty, the prophets, 'Should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I have done for many years?'" So this is the big question, and this is these are people who were in time of exile in Babylon, and they started this habit of fasting for 2 months. Um, and the fifth month is remembering the temple that came down, and they've been mourning the fall of the Jerusalem temple for 70 years. For the 70 years they're in exile. So this is a totally different subject. These the next chapter, and I think the next 7 and 8 are all going to be answering this question. And when the Lord Almighty came to me, ask all the people of the land and the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And when you were eating and drinking, were you not just feasting for yourselves? And so they had their eyes on themselves. They're like, hey, I'll just do this great thing, and then the Lord will see how great I am, and He'll do great things for me. And the Lord's going to explain to them why this isn't a good thing, and they're feasting and drinking, and then they're not acknowledging the Lord and thanking the Lord and praising the Lord. They're just having a good time for themselves. And that's what the Lord's asking. Are these not the words of the Lord proclaimed through the earlier prophets when Jerusalem and its surrounding towns were at rest and prosperous, and the Negev and the western foothold hills were settled, so they're all secure in the land? And so Isaiah 58, 3 and 4 says, why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife, and in your striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. That's just one talking about fasting. And also Isaiah 58, verse 5. Is this the fast I have chosen, a day for a man to deny himself, to bow his head like a reed, and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Will you call this a fast and a day acceptable to the Lord? So this was themselves. They were making a big show of themselves, and they wanted to basically glorify themselves and say, hey, why isn't the Lord doing anything? I'm doing all these great things. And then goes on in verse 8, and the word of the Lord came again to Zechariah. This is what the Lord Almighty said. Administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other, but they refuse to pay attention. Stubbornly, they turned their backs and covered their ears. So the Lord said, I told you to do this, but they didn't listen. They plugged their ears and didn't want to listen. They made their hearts as hard as flint and would not listen to the law or the words that the Lord Almighty had sent by His Spirit through the earlier prophets. So the Lord Almighty was angry. He didn't like that they weren't doing the right thing. And it reminded me of Micah 6, verse 8. He hath shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. That's Micah 6, verse 8. So you got to do justice. They weren't doing justice. Love mercy, to show the love to these people. They weren't doing that, and they weren't walking humbly with the Lord. They're walking in pride with the Lord. And when I called, they did not listen. So when they called, I would not listen, says the Lord Almighty. I scattered them. This is going to be in the future. This is the last judgment of Deuteronomy chapter 28. and it says they're going to be scattered, and they were scattered in 70 A.D. So he's talking about because they wouldn't listen to him, that they're hard-headed, and that's going to happen in the future. They're going to be scattered with a whirlwind among all the nations where they were strangers. The land they left behind them was so desolate that no one traveled through it. This is how they made the pleasant land desolate. So God sent them away, scattered them because they didn't listen to him, and it made the land desolate. And desolate, I think Mark Twain, when he went there in the early 1900s, he wanted to go to Israel and see what it looked like, and he said, "It's so dry here, I don't think a cactus would grow here." And that's what he thought, and it got to be a horrible place. But we know that the Lord's going to take them back there, and they're going to make it a green spot again from the other prophets. But chapter 8, the word of the Lord Almighty came to me. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I am very jealous. They use the word zeal. Could be zealous for Zion. I am burning with jealousy for her. He's saying, hey, I do love you guys. I really want you to get back with me. And this is what the Lord says. I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem. That's a millennial kingdom. And then Jerusalem will be called the faithful city, and the mountain of the Lord Almighty will be called the holy mountain. And that's what all the people of the Lord will say, probably Mount Zion. And this is what the Lord Almighty says. Once again, men and women of ripe old age will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each of them with a cane in hand because of their age. So they're going to live for a long time. It's going to be a long time in Jerusalem, but it's going to be a safe place. They don't have to hide out because somebody's going to rob them. And also the city streets will be filled with boys and girls playing there. What a great time. There's not going to be any problems. Nobody's going to be doing bad things in the world. It's going to be a beautiful time during the millennial kingdom. Isaiah 65 verse 20, no longer will a nursing infant live but a few days, or an old man fail to live out his years, for the youth will die at 100 years, and he who fails to reach 100 will be considered a curse. So these people are going to live for a very long time. If 100 is a youth, then they're going to live for at least 400 years, or maybe 1,000 years. I don't know. So this is what they're talking about. Isaiah says about this time too. And this is what the Lord Almighty says. It may seem marvelous to the remnant of this people at that time, but will it be marvelous to me, declares the Lord Almighty? This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will save my people from the countries of the east and from the west. I will bring them back to live in Jerusalem, and they will be my people, and I will be faithful and righteous to them as their God. So this is the recalling back to the land, and these people don't repent, and they're still a little bit stiff-necked and hard-headed, but the Lord promises, I'm going to take you back to the land, and he's going to be faithful and righteous to them as God, as he is being right now. This is what the Lord Almighty says at the present time. Now hear these words. Let your hands be strong so that the temple may be built. So he switched back to the present, talking about the temple that they're building right now. And this is also what the prophets said who were present when the fountain was laid for the house of the Lord Almighty. And so they predicted that this temple would be built. And before that time, there were no wages for the people or hire for animals. This is when they were slaves in the land of Babylon. No one could go about their business safely because of their enemies. Since I had turned everyone against their neighbor, but now I will deal with the remnant of this people as I did in the past, declares the Lord. So he brought them back. He took care of them. He's going to help them build the temple, and so the remnant that's going to be in Israel in the tribulation period, he's going to deal with these people just the same that have come back to Israel. The seed will grow well, the vine will yield its fruit, and the ground will produce its crop, and the heavens drop their dew, and I will give all things as an inheritance to the remnant of this people. So there's going to be uh, water back in the land, and everything's going to grow. It's going to yield fruit. Right now, they supply most of the fruit to Europe just from the little country the size of New Jersey, and all these things are coming true. Just as you, Judah, and Israel, that's the southern and northern kingdom, have been cursed among the nations, so I will save you, and you will be a blessing. So they're going to be saved, and as they are right now, and they come back to the land. And do not be afraid, but let your hands be strong. So they got to be strong in the near, right there, building the temple, but also during the tribulation period, and their hands got to be strong. And this is what the Lord Almighty says. Just as I had determined to bring disaster on you and show no pity when your answers angered me, said the Lord Almighty, so now I have determined to do good again to Jerusalem and Judea. Do not be afraid. So this is a promise to the people at the time, but also promise to the Israelites during the tribulation. So keep trusting the Lord. These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to each other and render true and sound judgments in your court. So you got to have the truth, and you have to have good justice. Do not plot evil against each other, and do not love to swear falsely. I hate this. So all part of the Ten Commandments. Don't bear false witness, and don't do evil things, and don't make a false oath. And God doesn't like that. He likes people to be just with each other, declares the Lord. The word of the Lord Almighty came. This came to me. This is what the Lord Almighty says. The fast of the 4th and 5th and 7th and 10th month will become joyful and glad occasions and happy festivals for Judah. Therefore, love truth and peace. So this is the answer to the question finally at the end of chapter 8. And so it doesn't really answer their questions, but you see the feasts were meant to be a joyful and glad occasion and a happy festival. And it's not their feasts were a sad time, and that they were calling attention that they're mourning. And I'm doing this to myself so God will notice. And the feasts weren't meant to be that. They're supposed to be a time that you connect with the Lord, and then you're totally trusting with Him, and love, truth, and peace. And I think this is what we got to live our lives too, is walk with the Lord and love mercy and do justice and walk humbly with the Lord. So Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not upon your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. So you got to trust in the Lord. Tell Him you're trusting with Him, and thank Him for being with you. And just keep acknowledging Him all the time, and take a deep breath and say, hallelujah, praise the Lord. And this is a good plan for our lives. When bad things come, say, hey, I'm plugged in. I got the Lord with me, and I can I can have peace and I can have love and joy. And so this is what we got to do. We got to walk with the Lord and totally trust in Him. This is an application for us, and it's an application for them, I believe. And this is what the Lord Almighty says: many peoples and the inhabitants of many cities will yet come. That's to Jerusalem. And the inhabitants of one city will go to another and say, let us go at once to entreat the Lord and seek the Lord Almighty. I myself am going. So he's calling for people to call other peoples to go to Jerusalem. And many people in the powerful nations will come to Israel to seek the Lord Almighty and entreat Him. And so this is going to be during the millennial kingdom again, I believe. And this is what the Lord Almighty says: in those days, 10 people from all languages and nations will take firm hold of one Jew by the hem of his robe and say, let us go with you because we have heard that God is with you. So the Jews aren't going to be hated by people in the world anymore. They're going to be looked up to. They're going to be admired, and they're going to be thinking they're the ones who have what I want. And this is during the millennial kingdom. Thank God. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and the people shall flow unto it, and many nations will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and will walk in his paths, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. That's Micah 4 verses 1 through 2, also talking about this time. And Isaiah is mentioned in Isaiah 2 and Micah 4. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And that's a promise. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be peace in the world, and the Lord is going to be ruling as king and priest. So Zechariah 9 through 14, it's going to cover these different topics. Victory of Alexander the Great, the defeat of Jerusalem by Rome, Judas's betrayal, the rise of the Antichrist, the battle of Armageddon, the return of Christ, the salvation of the Jews, and the reign of Jesus on earth. So this is now, these last chapters are going to be about prophecy of what's coming in the future. And chapter 9, this is going to be Alexander. And the first part of this oracle focuses particularly on the true king who would come and exercise sovereignty over the nations. This chapter also has a near and far fulfillment, the near being the revival of Israel's power under Judas Maccabeus in the 2nd century BC, and the far being the return and reign of the Messiah. So there's going to be two fulfillments in this story. And it's a prophecy. These are the cities that Alexander conquered in the order that he conquered them, and this happened in 325 BC, and this was written in 530 BC. So this is almost 200 years later. And the word of the Lord is against the land of Hadrach, and will come to rest on Damascus. For the eyes of all people and all tribes of Israel are on the Lord, and on Hamath too, which borders on it, and on Tyre and Sidon, though they were very skillful. So all these places are falling, and so the people of Israel are focused on the Lord, but they're also looking at the countries that border them because they know if they go down, they might be next. Entire two sieges. They are first sieged by Nebuchadnezzar, and they escaped. Uh, but then they're going to be sieged now by Alexander the Great. Has built herself a stronghold. She shall heap up silver like dust and gold like dirts of the street. So she withheld from Nebuchadnezzar for over 13 years. Verse 4, but the Lord will take away her possessions and destroy her power on the sea, and she will be consumed by fire. And then, well, we know right now, you can see where it was, but the whole thing was wiped out as predicted here by the Lord in the second siege. And verse 5, Ashkelon will see it and fear. Gaza will writhe in agony, and Ekron too, her hope will wither. Gaza will lose her king, and Ashkelon will be deserted. So they saw this happen, and people panicked. Some of them bugged out, and because they knew that was a strong place that was going to be tough to take. And when it went down, they said, "We don't got a chance." A mongrel people will occupy Ashdod, and I will put an end to the pride of the Philistines. So, what happened is Alexander the Great released some of the slaves that he got from other countries and had them take over these cities. And I will take the blood from their mouths, the forbidden fruits from between their teeth. So, these Philistines and these different people that were taken over, they were heavy into demon worship or idol worship, and they had this forbidden food that they eat, and they had this blood that they were drinking, and this blood was some from animals and some maybe from children too. And so it's going to stop the idol worship. And those who are left will belong to our God and become a clan in Judah and Ekron, just like the Jebusites. Uh, the future, the focus is now here and in the rest of this chapter on the remnant of the 10 tribes in the northern kingdom. So they're going to come back to a little bit to the northern kingdom at this time. Verse 8, but I will encamp at my temple to guard it against the marauding forces. Never again will an oppressor overrun my people, for now I'm keeping watch. So Alexander won't conquer. They met him and showed him the book of Daniel and showed how he was written in there, and he repented. He offered a lamb sacrifice to Yahweh and said, okay, I'm not going to do that. And verse 9, rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion, shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So this is a sign when the Messiah is going to come the first time. And this is when Jesus had the triumphal entry. And when they ride on a colt, uh, it means that they're coming in peace. If they ride on a horse when Jesus comes again, that means he's coming to defeat them. And so this is pointing to Jesus, the first coming, and a great prophecy here. Verse 10, I will take the chariots from Ephraim, that's Israel, and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. So this is talking again when he comes again the second time. And it's going to be the same guy who came the first time on the colt. And he will proclaim peace to all the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. So it's from the river that's Jerusalem to all the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, and so that's the blood covenant, the new covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. God's people had been in the pit of Babylon exiles, but they would find themselves in a worse predicament in the end of the age. So there's going to be a pit talking about the time of Babylon, but also Joseph and Jeremiah were in a waterless pit and they were rescued. And so these people are going to be rescued from Babylon, that pit, and at the end of the age, they're going to be a pit, but they're going to be rescued too when Jesus comes again. Verse 12, return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will blend Judah as I blend my bow and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your son Zion against your sons Greece and make you like a warrior's sword. So this is talking about during the time of uh, Alexander the Great, and they're going to have a great army, and this is going to be the Maccabean rebellion it's talking about here. So he kind of goes back and forth, different fulfillments of different things, and it's kind of hard to follow it all, but if you kind of know everything, then you can kind of read what he's talking about. And then the Lord will appear over them with his arrow, will flash like lightning. The sovereign Lord will sound the trumpet, and he will march into the storms of the south. So this is talking again about the return of Jesus Christ, his second coming. And the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with sling stones. So these are the people that have them in the pit at the end of the tribulation, and they're going to come, and we're going to come, and they're going to destroy them with sling stones. They're going to be asteroids the size 100 pounds, and different things are going to come. And they will drink and roar as with new wine. They will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar. And so they're going to be like this great wine, and they're going to be this perfect wine at the sprinkling of the altar, these Jewish people. And he's saying that they're going to be purified. And the Lord their God will save his people on that day as a shepherd saves his flock. They will sprinkle in his land like jewels in a crown. So this is the Jewish people during the millennial kingdom, that he's going to save them and bring them on to the millennial kingdom. And how attractive and beautiful they will be. Grain will make the young men thrive, and new wine the young women. So there's going to be plenty of grain, plenty of wine, and so there's just going to be a wonderful, joyous time during the millennial kingdom. In chapter 10, the emphasis changes to the people of the king, the Israelites, who will return to the promised land and rule with the king. So there's going to be more dual fulfillment and hard to follow in this chapter, the last one we're going to go through. Ask the Lord for rain in the springtime. It is the Lord who sends the thunderstorm. He gives showers of rain to all people and plants of the field to everyone. So this is going to be, I think, when they return, this is going to happen. And springtime, they had rain in April and May. In the fall, they had November and December. And so he's going to bring the rain back again, as he did when they returned, but also during going to be the millennial kingdom. And the idols speak deceitfully, diviners see visions that lie, they tell dreams that are false, they give comfort in vain. These people wandered like sheep, oppressed for lack of a shepherd. That was Israel in the past. And my anger burns against the shepherds, and I will punish the leaders, for the Lord Almighty will care for his flock. And so these are the false prophets, the Pharisees, all these bad leaders were the bad shepherds, and they were the bad uh, prophets too. And for the Lord Almighty will care for his flock, the people of Judah, and make them like a proud horse in battle. And so they're going to be built up, they're going to be strong, and they're going to be admired by the people. From Judah will come, this is talking about Jesus Christ here, the cornerstone, from him the tent peg. So this is the first coming is going to talk about both comings, but the cornerstone, Jesus said, I am the cornerstone that is going to be rejected, and then I'll become the main cornerstone when I come back again. So his first time, he's going to be the cornerstone that's rejected from Psalm 110, and the tent peg is where he's going to be nailed to the cross. And that's his first coming. The second coming, from him the battle bow, from him every ruler. And that's the second coming. He's going to conquer, he's going to be the ruler of everybody. And together they will be like warriors in battle, trampling their enemies into the muds of the street. And so that's during the second coming. And they will fight because the Lord is with them, and they will put the enemy horsemen to shame. I will strengthen Judah and save the tribes of Joseph. I will restore them because I have compassion on them. They will be as though I had not rejected them, for I am the Lord their God. I will answer them. So this is a promise to them. This is what God's going to do in the future. He's going to take care of them. He's going to take care of them at this time, but he's also going to take care of them again in the tribulation period. He's going to take care of them in the millennial kingdom. The Ephraimites, and that's the Israelites, will become like warriors, and their hearts will be glad as with wine, and they're going to have great joy. They're going to have great confidence, and their children will see it and be joyful. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. They're totally trusting the Lord. They know that the Lord's in charge, that we know how it ends, and we can trust him no matter what. Verse 8, I will signal for them and gather them in. Surely I will redeem them. And so the Lord is the one who's going to redeem them. He redeemed them on the cross, and he's going to redeem them here during the end of the tribulation period too. And they will be as numerous as before. And so that's before, during the Old Testament time, I believe. And though I scattered them among the peoples, that's in 70 AD, yet in the distant lands they will remember me, and they and their children will survive, and they will return. So they're all talking about returning to the land again. And this is probably a dual fulfillment during this time that they were in building the temple, but also it's going to be during the millennial kingdom and also during the tribulation time. And I will bring them back from Egypt and gather them from Assyria. I will bring them to Gilead and Lebanon, and there will not be room enough for them. So this is a great promise. They're going to be like the sands of the beach, and they're all going to be back in the land, and he's promising them prosperity and a lot of people. And they will pass through the sea of trouble, and surging sea will be subdued, and all the depths of the Nile will dry up. Assyrian's pride will be brought down, and Egyptian scepter will pass away. So they're going to be destroyed. Egypt's always been around. Assyria's always been around. They're going to be brought down, and this is going to happen when Jesus comes again the second time. And I will strengthen them in the Lord and in his name. They will live securely. declares the Lord. And this is talking about the Jewish people again during the millennial kingdom, that they are going to be taken care of at this time. So I think this is the end. I'll see if there's another page.